Okay, I just want to preference that this happened quite a long time ago, but nevertheless it's pretty interesting. Me and my friends used to go to this old school. I think it was a middle school. I never really did like the place, but obviously I had to go, and that was the end of it. Every day that I did go, however, there would always be stories about hauntings happening within inside the school, particularly at night, of course, when everyone else was gone and perhaps the only people left were teachers grading essays or anything like that. There is one particular story, however, that I do remember very fondly, in the sense that it was perhaps the most popular, and I was a part of that story. What happened is that I had two friends, Mike and George. George was often the smart one in the group. Mike was basically the big, strong, dumb guy, to put it bluntly. And then there was me, Harry. I oftentimes was the dumb guy that would always get involved with things that realistically I probably shouldn't have. Basically, I was a bit too brave for my own good. And during that time, my friend, Mike, was talking about one of the hauntings. I suggested that maybe we should stay after school and see if anything truly does happen. George simply replied with, "No, I don't think that's a good idea. I mean, realistically, what are the odds that something does happen and then we're screwed?" The air was silent, as we then realized it probably would be a bit of a stupid thing. But my bravery prevailed, as I then said to George to shut up, in polite terms, and that maybe we could find something interesting. We'd finally have proof, and then we'd become the most popular kids in the school. We then waited till the end of the day. Our lessons were over, and it was the last second. I don't remember what specific lesson it was, but I remember being bored out of my mind as I looked at the clock. Surely enough, it eventually ended the lesson as I heard the bell, as it was then home time. We then ran out, except we didn't go home right away. We actually stayed there for a brief second or two to get a glimpse at the school, so that way we'd know where to be and what to avoid. We waited for about 30 minutes or so when everyone else had gone, and the teachers, sure enough, were still doing their own thing. Now, it was at that point that we knew we had to go back home. Basically to keep up appearances and make sure that our mum and dads weren't worried. So we did that, and we pretty much went on through our day until it was roughly about the time for us to go to bed. We all then decided to sneak out of our homes and go visit the school. Sure enough, it was now dark. A few lights were still on, surprisingly, but that was probably because of the cleaners finishing up, or so we thought. We went in through the back entrance. The back entrance actually led to the gym. There was also a sub-hallway which then linked to the main hallway to get to, essentially, the center part of the school. We all remember walking around and just looking at the different lockers that adorned the walls. Harry then turned to both of us, and then he looked real quickly at George. "Hey George, I thought you only do extracurricular activities. You didn't tell me you did PE." "That's because I don't do PE. I do extracurricular activities, just not PE." "So, why is your locker over here? And better yet, why is there PE equipment in it?" That's when I chime in and say to both of my friends, "Look guys, anything could happen for all we know. Maybe this is just some spare kit that the teacher's put in his locker to later remove. They'll get rid of it in the morning." The two then nodded to say as if it was a possibility, which it was, and then we heard a loud bang. "That came from the gym," Mike said, almost in disbelief. We ran over there and, surely enough, there was nothing there. No benches, no equipment, nothing. We even tried to take a closer look in the darkened corner of the room, and there was nothing there. We both looked at George, who was almost trembling, as he then took a seat on the floor. Guys, listen, I think we've done enough. Maybe we should get out of here now? And ruin the fun of taking a look at a darkened school? Heck no, I said with more confidence in my voice and the occasional hint of sarcasm. Mike, however, was still looking dumbfounded at the room that once made a loud noise. And sure enough, we all decided that maybe we'll just take one last look around the building, and maybe even go to the main hall. Now, here's the thing. When we did go out the gym, we didn't hear any noise, except for the sound of a locker being closed. We ran over there, and surely enough, the locker with the equipment in, George's locker, was now shut. And we even tried to rattle it, and there was no sign of equipment in there at all. Alright guys, that's it. I've had enough. This adventure has gone long enough. If we don't get out of here now, we might very well just end up the victims in a horror movie. Okay, George, listen, you're not wrong on that front, but I still think maybe there's more to this than meets the eye. I mean, like I said, the janitors were still probably doing some more cleaning, and maybe they were just locking up and taking the remainder of the stuff. Really? So why would they proceed to make a loud noise in the gym, go back to here, and then grab these PE clothes? Especially put them in my locker. This is all too weird even for me, and you know what, guys? I think I'm done with it. Alright then, you made your point. Let's, guys, be quiet, I heard Mike say as he hushed us both. Only then did we hear the footsteps. They were getting closer and closer by the second. Our only option was to go and hide. But where? That's when George said, "The gym. We can hide in there for the time being." The three of us then ran in there, quicker than you could say a word. We then remained silent as we heard the footsteps getting closer and closer throughout the hallway. But it was too dark to even see anyone go past. We did hear the faint whisper though, however, and then that's what gave us the big chill. Something opened the doors and we were huddled in the corner, desperately trying not to make any noise. George slightly whimpering, Mike trying to cover his mouth, and me just sitting there. I saw its eyes. They were deep, almost as if it had no eyes, but I could make out the distinct reflection of them in the dark. Now what scares me the most is the way the thing smiled. It was an inhuman smile, like a rabid animal would do if it found its prey. Even now that distinct laugh is enough to essentially bring my eyes to sort of water a little bit. The thing's breath as well, we could smell it from all the way across the damn gym. Only then did it turn around, and for the briefest second, we thought we were safe. Okay guys, let's get the heck out of here right now before George could finish his sentence. It came running as it roared. I don't think we ran faster than ever on that day. It may be a blur, but it was one heck of a scary one when we looked back for the brief second. The thing faded, but before it did, it revealed its red, snarling teeth. Naturally, we didn't talk about it the next day. We just wanted to forget about it as best we could. Until now. And the reason why I bring this story up is actually because, as of recently, I've actually decided to work at the same place I used to fear. Or at least from that day onward, anyway. I worked as a janitor, and what I can safely say is, only on dark October afternoons, especially when I'm the only one there after hours. I'll glimpse so much as once at the gym, and when the lights flicker, in the dark, I see a beastly looking thing as it lunges at me. Okay, so looking back on this now, it still seems pretty creepy. But all things considered, it's probably the worst experience I had at school. It was a long time ago, but nevertheless, I'm going to recount these events as followed. It all started one day after a pretty big game of football for last lesson. It was around the winter time, which meant it was going to be darker a lot quicker. We were just packing up, and actually, it was only when we got to the locker room that our teacher said that all bus routes would be closed temporarily, so it would be best if we just stay here for now. Now, I didn't have any objections to this, as my friends were all with me at the time. I had 3 of them. And needless to say, we all did our own thing, chucking ping pong balls around the changing room, and not really doing anything else. Now, there was this one other kid in our group at the time, in our PE class. I think his name was Jimmy, or something along those lines. The point is, he was a pretty weird kid, and no one really wanted to talk to him. Truth be told, he didn't really have anything to say back. He'd just do some weird things, and creep you out sometimes, at best. Sometimes he would also get really angry though, and as you can imagine, it would cause a lot of fights. The kid was kind of a trouble magnet, to put it bluntly. It was only on this day that we saw him staring out the window, looking at the little pattering of snow which was slowly getting closer and closer to the field as it then stuck to the grass. However, we didn't expect him to then turn around and start making conversation with us. He said something to one of my other friends about maybe hanging out afterwards, but as you can imagine, we weren't in the mood to hang out when it was dark and, needless to say, very cold. Eventually, the bus came, and needless to say, we were the first ones out of that changing room. We all got on the bus, talked about how funny the day had been, and well, needless to say, we eventually got home and went to sleep. The next day was the same thing. We had PE, and although some of us weren't looking forward to it, given the fact that this wasn't really dodgeball again, or football, at least it was a break from the regular lessons. Anyway, we did that, and shortly after, we decided to get changed. This was around afternoon time, so shortly after this, we were going to get dinner, and then pretty much go to our last 2 lessons. Now, the kid, Jimmy, as you can imagine, came up to us again and started talking. And that's when one of my other friends, we'll call him Sam for privacy, steps up and tells Jimmy to politely get lost. Now, as you can imagine, Jimmy didn't take that lightly and started to get very angry. When he pushed Sam onto the floor, the teacher then shortly after grabbed him and put him in detention. But he gave us this really unsettling look. The kind of look that signifies you perhaps being dead. You know, like a death stare of sorts. However, it eventually got to the point where we did our 2 lessons, and it was then home time. We were just chatting about general stuff, me and my friends, when out of the corner of our eye, we saw Jimmy once again emerging from the entrance from where the locker rooms would be. He didn't say anything, he just stared at us, and that was enough for us to know that he wasn't being very friendly, by any means. So, as soon as the bus got here, we decided to leave, when Jimmy, all of a sudden, and for that matter without anyone realizing, pulled out a sharpened piece of a ruler and then lunged full speed at me. The kid was weird, sure, but for him to do this in the middle of everyone else getting on the bus was crazy enough. All I did was move out the way and push him down, and pretty much then restrained him. Sure enough, the teacher came over, grabbed his makeshift weapon, and confiscated it, thus eventually giving him another detention. We didn't see much of him that day, but it's crazy to think that he wanted me dead. And I don't know how he sharpened that ruler. Actually, now I think about it, maybe he sharpened that ruler when we were in the woodwork class. After all, he did have a knack for that type of subject. But it doesn't change the fact that he still tried to kill me and possibly even my friends. So, let this be a little warning. Jimmy, let's not meet again. Okay, so I want to mention that I never really liked school food. It always looked putrid, and even then, I didn't like having much of it on my plate. Needless to say, I always usually had sandwiches, and the whole reason for that is also because of what happened in this story. I was in grade 5 at the time, not doing all that much, and come to think of it, I was only a young middle school student. Not all that much to say, really, I know, but everything was simple back then. During that day, we actually had a new lunch lady. Yeah, she seemed okay, I guess, but I never really bothered to get anything from the cafeteria. Until the day I forgot my sandwiches. I was quite mad, but still, at least I could always get something from the cafeteria. So, I decided to go over there and essentially rummage around and see whatever looked good enough for me to eat. I eventually settled on some good fries and chicken, and proceeded to get that. I then sat with my friends, and obviously everything was okay, and I ate my food. Surely enough, I eventually got to the point where it was only the last lesson. Now, at this point, I couldn't be bothered to think. I just couldn't wait to go home. And little did I know, that would happen sooner than I thought. I instantly felt sick. I don't know why, I just felt like something was wrong. And so I asked to be excused as I went to the bathroom. I threw up in the sink, and surprise, surprise, all the food that I had previously upchucked. I could see the fries, and I could see bits of chicken, but what appeared to be most disgusting is something else. What appeared to be a shard of glass within the food. It looked blunt and still intact. I ran to the teacher to get their attention about this. They then fired the lunch lady that was new to the job, and it turns out that she wasn't exactly the most sane person to be in this type of job. She did have a prior record of going unhinged and doing her own things. And, well, it creeps me out to know that this all resulted in me being sick, and a cacophony of blood and disgusting bits of food was then brought up, and, as you can imagine, made a despicable impact on what this food should truly be, which was edible. I never really wanted to eat school dinners after that, and even now, just thinking about it, it still gives me chills. And I kinda want to cough a little bit, probably to get this horrible disgustingness out of my system.